Welcome back to another episode of Paradigm Shift TV 314. Man, got the bro Jerome Green in the house, and he got some stuff that he want to get off his chest. So we're not gonna be on here real long. We just had to let the brother get what's on his chest off his chest while we go through what we're going through at the moment. Jerome, what's up with it, bro? It's been a little while, man. What's good with you?
Oh, grace and peace, man. Yeah, it has been a little while, man. You know, I've been all right though, just checking out some of the new content on Paradigm Shift TV 314. But today, man, I'm just coming on to present a case against something that I agree with. I mean, I disagree with, I should say, from both ends of the spectrum. You know what I'm saying? And I'm gonna try to show how one actually influences the other, even though both are wrong and not based in reality. But I'm gonna just give you a little short synopsis of what I've learned so far, because I'm no expert on it, but I have drawn connections from the two premises. You know what I'm saying? Even though one preceded the other, you know what I'm saying, things like that, but um, they both based in the same mode of thought. So
Okay. So before we get into that, let the people know what you titled this video and what brought that on.
well, the title of the video is called "The Dogma of White Supremacy and Black Supremacy." Now, before anybody gets triggered, when I say black supremacy, I'm not necessarily speaking of um, any type of institution or set of rules or things like that to subjugate another people group. But what I am talking about is um, the the rhetoric and the literature and the teachings and beliefs that encompass a black supremacist mindset. You know what I'm saying? So
Okay. Well, hey, there y'all go. He just laid it out for y'all, just like that. Nobody to get mistaken. We don't want nobody to take nothing he says out of context or try to mix it or twist it for your own benefit. If you do disagree with what the brother's saying, at least disagree with what the brother's saying based off of what he's saying. So he just laid it out there for you right there. Well, Jerome, bro, let's go and jump into this, bro. The floor is yours, bro. You can talk.
all right, cool. So first I wanna lay out what white supremacy or what the white supremacist attitude is, um, and how it how it varies in its expressions, right? So white supremacy in totality is like the attitudes, beliefs, values, ideals, behaviors, and and thoughts on basically an individual, group, and institutional level, right? Um, and it's predicated on like assumptions of black cultural inferiority, black biological inferiority, or both, which most times is both. The ideology of white supremacy actually matured and gained intellectual respectability during the 19th century through like pseudoscientific ideas and concepts and you know the idea of race and racial separation and all that type of stuff. Um, and this is all to um, signify rationale and justification for white oppression of black people. You know what I'm saying? So the reason why I laid that out is to um, to basically help people to understand that I'm not doing this to what's the word? I'm not doing this to let like white supremacists off the hook or make it seem like we shouldn't fight against white supremacy, things like that. But I don't think we should do it with an idea of black supremacy. It's like we kind of like trying to fight fire with fire, so to speak. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through what white supremacist ideas and concepts existed during that time in the 19th century, and how they tried to basically use ethnology and other supposed scientific inquiries to justify white superiority and black inferiority. So Western cultural associations of blackness with sin, evil, lewdness, pathology, dirt, excrement, etc., was deeply embedded and insinuated that human blackness as a character trait was despicable. Negrophobia and the image of the black man as devils and subhuman symbols of evil also existed. So that last part is something I want y'all to keep in mind, because they view black people, specifically black men, as devils and symbols of evil and subhuman and stuff like that. Now, if any of y'all are familiar with certain groups in the black community, mainly, Nation of Islam, some 5% sects, and even some black Hebrew Israelite One West camps, they call the white man the devil. So this idea, based on racial understandings, it did not originate with the Nation of Islam, 5%ers, and certain black Hebrew Israelite camps. This was something that they took from an earlier idea that white supremacists came up with, and they just twisted it, And so it's a few examples of that as I go along, of how white supremacist ideas and concepts influence the teachings of certain groups in the black community, and sect formations of those groups in the black community. So what I want to touch on now is ethnology, which is something else that they tried to use to propagate white supremacy and black inferiority. So ethnology is a science that deals with the division of human beings into races and their origin, distribution, relations, and characteristics. And it's also an anthropology dealing chiefly with the comparative and analytical study of cultures. So one way that they try to use ethnology to support white supremacy and black inferiority is through racial eugenics and the idea of degenerationism. Now, racial eugenics is basically a pseudoscience in and of itself, and it posits that through successive stages of breeding and things like that, you can come up with an ideal race. You know what I'm saying? And we see the first examples of this through, or one of the first examples through Madame Blavatsky and her School of Theosophy. And I got to give a shout out to BK Apologist because he his information helped me to realize that that's what she was
Shout
actually
out to
teaching
Big
in
K.
her school of theosophy. Yeah, always, man. So she came up with a concept of something called, I think it was the 7 root races, if I got the number correct. And so she this idea was that over a period of time, humans kind of like evolved in a sense, but they evolved through successive races. And at the top of that racial pecking order, you had the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan race. And even 2 of her students, C.W. Leadbetter and Annie Besant, wrote a book called Man, Hence Thou and Wither. And in the book, there's a deity called Manu, and Manu actually goes. He conducts this racial eugenics regime, so to speak. And when he's done, because his whole MO is to create the perfect race. And when he's done, of course, the perfect ideal race is the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan race. And that has a connection with the narrative of Yaqub, which comes from the Nation of Islam. Some 5%ers believe in the narrative of Yaqub as well. So in the narrative of Yaqub, just to put it in a nutshell, he also undergoes a racial eugenics experiment. And instead of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, quote-unquote white race being the ideal and perfect race, instead they are the degenerate, inferior, malevolent, deceitful race of people who are basically uncivilized savages. So that's just another connection with white supremacist ideas and how certain Black groups twisted the idea in favor of Black people. And I'm not saying that, and I mean, I understand why they did it. What I'm saying is it's not right. Objectively, it's not. It's not something that should be justified. So when it comes to racial eugenics and degenerationism, one of the early proponents of the idea was a ethnologist named Josiah Knott, and he lived from 1804 to 1873. He was a resident of Columbia, South Carolina, and he actually graduated from South Carolina College in 1824. So he was an ethnologist and did not believe that mankind in totality came from 2 single human ancestors, but instead believed in the idea of polygenesis, which stated that different races were created at different times in different places. He used the concept of polygenism to promote white phylogenetic superiority and white historical supremacy. So we can see here that, white supremacists were kind of, coming up with all kind of pseudoscientific ideas. The idea of polygenesis really has no basis in science. And even when it first emerged in the 19th century, it was kind of like the outlier, or it was just it wasn't a popular view to take on, but people still held to the idea. They pushed it. They wrote literature about it, and they all in the name of, you know, trying to rationalize white supremacy. So another proponent of white supremacy and apologenism was George Glidden. He lived from 1809 to 1857. He was born in St. Thomas, United Kingdom, and he was an American Egyptologist. So as an Egyptologist, he, like Knott, was a proponent of polygenism, which I stated earlier. And he also believed that the ancient Egyptians had been Caucasians. So we know that there's been an ongoing dispute about the origins of ancient Egypt, or what some call ancient Kemet, and who the original inhabitants were. Of course, you have scholars like Sheikh Anta Diop that argue for a Black African origin, but then you also have other scholars and earlier scholars such as George Glidden, and I believe Josiah Knott also advocated for a Caucasian Egypt. It was either he advocated for a Caucasian Egypt, or he advocated for the idea that Egypt was like of mixed origin, which means that you had Negroes, Caucasians, and Semitic people that inhabited the land. And where Josiah Knott promotes the idea of white supremacy in that theory is that he says that all the architecture and monuments and things is owed to the Caucasian race because of their supreme intelligence, and things like that. So they both, you know, it's all rooted in white supremacy. So I think even in that time, though, you had individuals such as surprisingly Frederick Douglass, who else? Martin Delany, I think William Wells Brown, and I believe even W.E.B. Du Bois fought for African origin in Egypt, because this idea in and of itself was a polemic against white supremacy. Because if Egypt or ancient Kemet hypothetically was of African stock, and these African people are responsible for building these monuments and things like that, and establishing this civilization which lasted 3,000 years or over 3,000 years, that right there kills any white supremacist idea that blacks were intellectually inferior and had no capacity to build a civilization that actually would rival or even usurp a civilization like Greece or Rome. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a lot to it. But I think it's interesting as well, you know, which is why I even undertook, you know, reading and gleaning information from, you know, where some of this stuff started and how it persists even to this day, even if it's under a different ethnic guise. You know what I'm saying? So a little bit more on George Glidden. His polygenesis arguments, they, you know, of course, they centered around the theme of white phylogenetic superiority as the reason for white historical and cultural superiority. So we already have two examples of two white individuals who were highly respected in their fields of study, who basically pushed for white superiority and white historical supremacy, and they tried to use different modes to solidify the idea that because of this phylogenetic superiority, um, white people were just naturally superior and black people were naturally inferior, and in turn their subjugation was just a natural occurrence. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to, chime in, you can, before I go on. I don't have a much left, but if you have any questions.
I was just listening. I've heard you bring up some of this stuff um, over, the years, and I would say that anyone who are familiar with those names that you listed, if they know their work, then I would say that it would be impossible for them to disprove what you're saying. Making the connections that you have made and presenting them to show the connections and how it got from this to where it's at now. I mean, I don't even see why somebody would even try to dispute it or refute it unless they don't know a lot of those people, or they may have heard the names but have never studied their work. And you know how I feel about it overall when it comes down to people thinking that they are somehow superior to another person just because of the skin color you didn't get to choose. I think that's utterly ridiculous, to say it plainly. I think that's stupid, I think it's dumb. But I do get that there are people who do believe that, and some of them do try to give justifications for why they believe it, and a lot of them think that believing in this black superiority type of thing, they think that it's something that was invented now, or something that just came on the scene, when they don't know that a lot of this stuff has been on the scene, but by the white counterparts. And when they try to take on that same mindset, really all they're doing is taking on the same mindset of the white supremacists who was doing it before them, because at the end of the day, you're going to end up with the same type of talking points. So um,
Hmm.
you know, uh, to me, I know it's different nationalities and nations and different places and all that, but at the end of the day, we're all one. As when it comes down to, I can have a baby with any kind of race. If I needed blood, the skin color wouldn't matter. If I needed a heart and all that stuff, skin color wouldn't matter. So I just think it's even ridiculous for anybody to believe it. But thank God that there are people such as yourself and others who are passionate about this subject enough to even want to go and look this stuff up and even present it to the people, man. So that's my little 2 cents on it, bro.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, man. I mean, it is a sad situation. Which, I mean, I understand why you have certain individuals in the black community who do advocate for a black superiority model, um, because they're just trying to fight against white supremacy and what white supremacy has said about us. So I understand it, but um, it's more than one way to respond to the ideology of white supremacy.
Right.
Um, and I think to try and duplicate the white supremacist talking points and concepts and ideas is almost in a way to acquiesce to them and how they think.
Right.
So that's where people should really stop and think about what they hold to, because you could very well be holding to a talking point or an idea that can be traced back to a white supremacist. And I know a lot of people that follow the Nation of Islam and the 5%ers and stuff like that, and even outside of those groups, just regular people in the Black community who've heard this stuff from the Nation of Islam and from 5%ers and stuff like that, and they believe it because it seems so compelling. They say that we got, science proves that this, this, that, and the third, and it's like, nah, you using, if you're using polygenesis in order to, make this point stick, then you're using something that was a byproduct of the pseudoscientific ideas of white supremacy.
In the first place.
Yeah, so it's like, you can't, like, getting so caught up in the racial idea in the first place is how, you kind of get set up.
Well,
me, I don't
like
believe in
not to cut you off, but like you were saying earlier, yeah, I totally can get in the time period, when our people was getting, beat down and hung and water hose on them and bit by dogs and all that. They needed some type of message to be uplifted by. So I get it to a certain extent, because even though the message was uplifting, it was still a lie. Like, we can uplift our people and any other people better than telling them lies. And then now, where we at now in 2024, man, 2024, bro. That's another year I've been knowing you, bro. Now where we are in 2024, it's kind of, again, to me, ridiculous for the younger sets of people, not the older people per se, even though they should be able to be persuaded as well, but for the younger mindsets of people who really didn't grow up like that, but to take the ideology of that time period and try to put that on your back to the point to where now you falling for lies. It's like, yeah, man, you got to let that skin color stuff go at a certain extent. But go ahead, bro.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I know that it's easy to get kind of lured into certain ideas because of the internet and how the algorithm operates and stuff like that. So it's easy because, I mean, not to go into nothing else, but like that's how I got into knowing about the conscious community and my little
Me
journey
too.
with that whole thing.
Me too.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Because I didn't, back then I didn't understand the importance of researching and citing sources and stuff like that until after I left. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I've been kind of like digging into certain ideas and things like that come from members of the conscious community, and even through the help of some other apologists. Like, of course, I gotta always shout out BK and Matthew Jackson and the work he's doing, and Damon Richardson and the stuff he's been doing, and of course Brother Barine, because Brother Barine was the one that put me on it all. Essentially. So I gotta shout him out too. But yeah, what I was gonna say was, me personally, I don't believe in race. You know what I'm saying? I understand that you have nationalities and ethnicities, but I don't believe in race because there's too many inconsistencies within the paradigm of race for race to be true. There's really no real tangible evidence of race as it has been presented to us. And even when you look at the racial census that is on job applications and all that type of stuff, it's been changed so many times since it first came out in, I think, maybe the 18th century, that you can't really take it seriously. You can't just you can't pinpoint somebody's racial identity based on the census because it's changed so many times over the centuries that it just it's not something that's a marker of race. It's just it changes with, I guess, the society, because race is a social construct, and it ultimately keeps people divided in a way, which is why and I understand white supremacy is at the top of all that, right? I understand that completely. But my thing is, what's the most effective way of combating and confronting white supremacy? Is it another form of supremacy, or is it something a little bit more based in reality, something that's a little bit more practical. And I would say it would be, I mean, if you're going to be Afrocentric or you're going to look to Africa for an answer, just adopt the philosophy of Ubuntu, and even more, you can actually, come to Christ and see everybody as an image bearer of God, go with that, or both, because you have African Christians who embrace Ubuntu and also see everybody as an image bearer of the Most High. So, it's simple to get out of that mode of thought, but you have to be willing to take the initiative. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say on that part. But I do have to mention some so-called Christian white pastors who also advocated for white supremacy, but it was just not through the argument of polygenesis, but through the argument of monogenesis. And monogenesis is a biblical concept, but they distorted the monogenesis biblical concept to favor white supremacy. And so I'm gonna give you the first example comes from Reverend Dr. Samuel Stanhope Smith, who was born in 1795, and he passed in 1812. And so he was a professor of moral philosophy and later became president of the College of New Jersey. And so he defended monogenesis with the argument that environment and not differences in biology constituted one's race. But he was not a racial egalitarian. He believed that Black people, as well as other non-Caucasians, constituted a human variation due to degeneration from the Caucasian original. So in essence, he believed that everybody on the planet started from two ancestors, or two people, a man and a woman. But he believed these two original people to be Caucasian, and everything else basically a deviation and a lower version of the original. And to me, that kind of reminds me of when you hear Nation of Islam 5% say, "Oh, well, the Black man is the original man, and everything else is secondary, basically." So we can kind of see a connection of, first it was the Caucasian that was the original man, and now it's the Black man that's the original man, and the Caucasian is this degenerate, secondary, So yeah, the second and last example that I have is John Bachman, who was born in 1790 and died in 1874. And he was an American naturalist and a Lutheran minister. He supposedly adhered to biblical monogenism, which asserts that all races derive from the same creation, like I stated earlier. However, he believed that the Negro constituted a degenerate variety of the human species whose inferiority had become irreversible. And so these are supposed to be men of the clergy. They're supposed to be like Christians, like, you know what I'm saying? And they take a Christian concept of everyone descending from two people, and they turn it to a justification for white superiority and Black inferiority. And I think that's reprehensible. It's disgusting, and it does not fit the Genesis account in any capacity. Because there's no indication that there was one race that was original. Well, that every ethnicity on the planet came from one specific race, so to speak, and everything that every person, well, every ethnicity and nationality that came from that original race is a deviation or a degenerate version of that original race. But this is what they were saying during that time, and they pushed it. I mean, you had some individuals who fought against it, and some of them were black. But this is something that has been pushed and pushed through the centuries, and I want to say, and I could be off on this. I'm gonna just put that out there. I could be off, but I want to say that during the Harlem Renaissance is where a lot of our people picked up some of this stuff, and they some of these ideas they started to discover, and I think what they did was they took, because it seems so based on just the evidence that they took some of these ideas and they twisted them to fit a doctrine of Black supremacy as a concept. Again, not an institution or nothing systemic, but just as a concept and idea. And they pushed the concept and idea through lectures, books, pamphlets, building whole doctrines and groups and movements off of these ideas. And so that version of Black supremacy does exist. Anybody can look up because we got YouTube now, we got Google. Any of these ideas, like the Yakub narrative, the melanin theory, the idea that white people are closer to, they have some animal DNA, their skin and eye color and hair texture, all of those things are markers of degeneration and just all that type of stuff. The idea that they have what's the blood type, rhesus monkey blood in them, and all this crazy mess. It can go back to the starting point is white supremacy, man. So in closing though, I just want to say that the monogenists, and the polygenists, generally pushed a phylogenetic Negro inferiority as the major explanation for alleged contemporary and historical Negro inferiority and subsequent subordination. And so some sources for this, The Mind of Frederick Douglass, and some of the excerpts from The Mind of Frederick Douglass come from 2 lectures on natural history of the Caucasian and Negro races, written in 1844 by Josiah Nott. Types of Mankind, written in 1844, also by Josiah Nott and George Glidden. Essay on the Causes of the Variety of Complexion and Figure in the Human Species, written in 1787 by Samuel Stanhope Smith. And The Doctrine of the Unity of the Human Race, examined on the Principles of Science, written in 1850 by John Bachman. So yeah, man, that's pretty much it.
Well, there y'all have it. There y'all have it. I think that was another good topic. I think there was another good breakdown of said topic. I personally think that this is a topic that's not talked about enough, especially in the conscience community, because as we are starting to see more and more of people talk like this, I think if they just traced it down the rabbit hole, they would have came to the same conclusion that you, I, and many others have already came to when dealing with this particular topic. And and for them to wake up and just see that it's really just a waste of time. It's a waste of headspace when you could be filling your head up with so much more knowledge, especially the knowledge about Christ and what He came to do and dying for our sins and everybody being one. When it comes to that type of type of ordeal, and everybody being made in the image of God. Therefore, we shouldn't look down on each other, at least in that type of way and for that type of reason. I mean, it's always a reason to shun somebody. It's always a reason to look down on somebody. But for those type of reasons, yeah, I just think that it's not only unnecessary, but it's ridiculous, man. And I can see how a lot of people, even such as myself, we walk away from Christ and then we fall into these type of teachings, and then we look back on it and like, man, that was so dumb. Like I wasted so much
Right.
time believing this or practicing this, but at the same time, I mean, you can't have a testimony without going through a test. And now look at people like you and I. We can come on these platforms and tell people that we know where they are because we used to be there. And hopefully we can help plant a seed or something that could lead them to the light and ultimately lead them back to the light, the way, the truth, and the life, which is Jesus Christ, man. And we ain't got no malice towards nobody. We are here to argue, just bang on the information and everything like that. And of course, y'all already know we'll put this UA Urban Apologetics information up against any information in the world because we are doing it not solely for ourselves at all in no way, shape, or form, but merely on our belief in our Lord and Savior, which is Jesus the Christ. And it's a beautiful thing, and when you see people with passion, um, such as like Brother Jerome, and you see that they're not in it for no other intentions but to give you the truth, man. I think it's a beautiful thing, bro. Do you got any last closing words or anything else that you would like to say before we close this show out?
Yeah, just a short last statement. I know that a lot of NOI members and at least the ones that I've met and 5%ers that I've talked to, one of the reasons why they are so against Christ is because they believe that Christ is a symbol of white supremacy because of the images that they grew up seeing, and the I guess the whitewashing aspect of the Bible and the people that are in the Bible. And of course, we can remember the Ten Commandments. All of us grew up watching the Ten Commandments, and we see that you know Moses is white, played by a white guy, and the Israelites are white. Just the Pharaoh, just all that type of stuff. Kind of like when they are introduced to teachings by the Nation of Islam and things like that, um, they're taught things such as Christianity. That's only 551 years old, and that's the white
Right.
man's religion. You need to come on out of that and come to this. This your natural way of life. You know what I'm saying? As a black man, so um, it's a racial element that causes them to walk away. And then the crazy thing, but not the crazy thing, but the thing is, they walk away, but they don't. They walk away without knowing the history of Christianity in Africa. They walk away not realizing that
Right. Right. Right.
Africa is mentioned so many times in the Bible that it ain't even funny. We and they walk away not knowing that the Hebrew people are the ones that wrote the Bible, so they weren't European. You know what I'm saying? And they couldn't have been these uh, lighter colored individuals because of the region that they lived in. So it's like I'm gonna use myself as an example, but I think that's what gets a lot of other people who walk away from the Bible or Christianity is that they don't know enough history and they don't know enough about the regions that are mentioned in the Bible, and they
That's
don't
what did it
know,
for me.
especially, yeah, me too. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't know that Christianity had been in Africa for as long as it had been. And probably hundreds of books on the history of Christianity in Africa. Um, and you could get a good idea of how they express, their tradition that they subscribe to. And if you don't want to necessarily go with a European expression, you don't necessarily have to. You can go with a more African centered expression. That's free for you to do. You know what I'm saying? But one thing I don't or haven't seen is I haven't really seen any Nation of Islam member or 5%er glean any knowledge from any ancient African form of wisdom. But we have whole books, study Bibles, all that type of stuff that we can glean African wisdom from, and still be true to the scripture. And the only thing that I've seen coming from the so-called wisdom lessons, the 120, the problem book, and different doctrines of the Nation of Islam and the 5%ers, is when you trace it back, it goes back to Western esoteric thought. So it's European, So it's an irony in them saying that we follow the white man's religion when the bulk of y'all's teachings goes, if not all of them, go back to Western esoteric teachings that preceded y'all, probably by 100, 200 years. So that's my little rant in closing.
Yeah, man. Knowledge is king, man. And like the Bible says, people will be destroyed for a lack of knowledge, man. And as you touched on, I want to touch on real quick before we get out of here too. Like you said, just not knowing enough about the history of the Bible and things like that. That's what drew me out of the Bible as well. Jumping online, running across people like Dr. Ray Higgins and all that, and then running into channels like Sadnetta and all that stuff way back in 2012 and all that. So it kind of shook me too. But actually looking into the stuff that those people were saying rather than just relying on my ignorance is what brought me and people such as yourself too right back around, not just because it was a feel good message. After actually going to go look into the stuff that they were saying and seeing all the lies in it, because I was already open to give it, I was already open to giving it a chance. Obviously, I had walked away from the faith, but then just looking into the stuff that they were saying and doing an honest research of it, and just seeing all the lies and seeing all the disconnects of it, and then going from there back to the Bible and like, now let me go look up all the stuff about this that I didn't know, or or that was intriguing me at that time, in comparisons to the stuff that I was learning from the conscious community. And when I did that honestly and did that unbiasedly, man, yeah, it just cost a 180, man. Came right back to the faith, but more knowledgeable, with more information about it, more truth when it comes to life, and more understanding of what other people who were non-believers and what they believe. So I can't say that it was boring doing it, because I probably wouldn't even have a YouTube platform today. Probably wouldn't be talking to you as much as we talk today if it wasn't for the journeys that we have took through the conscious community and ended right back up where we at now, man. So anyway, bro, let the people know where they can find you at, and then we'll get ready to close on out.
Well, I'm usually on Facebook, so I ain't on YouTube like that. So you can find me on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram. I don't necessarily have an apologetics platform as of yet, but you know, if you want to reach out and, you know, discuss even what was presented today, you know, you can find me on Facebook, message me, and I'll hit you back. My favorite name is Jerome Green, and right now I have the emblem of the best team in the league, the Baltimore Ravens, as my profile picture. So you should recognize that immediately. So
he had to throw it in there. Had to throw it in there, man. That is Jerome the Conscious Christian Green, man, for you. Well, y'all already know me. I go by the name of Nobody. I always trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody, and that is Jesus the Christ. We hope y'all enjoyed this little quick show today, man. Like I said, Jerome just had some stuff on his mind that we had to get off, man, and we've been talking about it for a long time now, man. So y'all may hear more information about this same subject in the future. And like Jerome Green said, if it's anything that you would want to chop it up with him about as pertaining to this subject or any other subject that he's spoke on in the past, you can reach him on Facebook. You can also get at me or get at the brother DMG, or show up on Paradigm Shift TV 314, and we'll try to make that thing happen for you, man. Like again, that has been Jerome Green. I am Nobody. This is Paradigm Shift TV 314. We appreciate y'all for hanging out with us, and we'll check y'all in the next one. That's peace.
peace.